Okay, so here we are at Live Work Anywhere, and we have an interview with Tomas Gutierrez, one of my favorite people in digital nomads. And today, Tomas is is a partner in Scalable Path, scalablepath.com, and he hires remote teams and brings remote talent to projects. And he's also working on a project of his own called remoteready.io, which helps facilitate remote best practices for companies and teams. And I'll let Tomas introduce himself and tell you a little bit more. Welcome, Tomas.
Hi, Libby. Thank you. Great intro. So I'm a lead architect and a partner at Scalable Path, and we are a Bay Area-based technology consulting and product delivery firm, and we're also a technology staffing platform. That means that we have like Elance, Odesk, TopTal. We have people throughout time zones, mainly the Americas, and we create teams based on the organization's needs to deliver on their product needs or strategy needs. And so we work a lot with remote teams and organizations and all of the components that make somebody successful working remotely.
Can you give me an example of a project that you work
on? We have many tech companies and startups, mainly in the US. I haven't asked any of them if I can talk to them publicly or about them publicly. Okay. So I can just give kind of generals. That comes from a consulting world. Always be careful about that. But we have, for example, a SaaS-based company out of San Francisco. And they work in the hospitality industry, and they have a platform which allows companies to, in the hospitality industry, to see a dashboard of all of their social media interactions with their audience, and also do applications and components for the hospitality industry. So for them, we manage all of their marketing, so the marketing website, design, etc. And then their actual product development, we have augmented team that's a staff augmentation with them, focusing mainly on Angular and front-end development, which is something that's very hot right now.
Sounds like a lot of work, a lot to manage remotely. How big is your team in the U.S. and how many people are remote?
So everybody in the organization is remote. We have no real estate. We have no office. And in the U.S., we have, I think, under 20, 30 people. We have over 10 executives, people that can be CTO, CEO of organizations, as well as designers, creative directors, etc. And then across the Americas, we have over 500 people in our platform, ranging skill sets from Angular, PHP, Node, marketing, SEM, etc. The thought leadership and a lot of the skill sets is based in the U.S. And a lot of the people that we bring on for teams are located throughout the Americas. So we have people all across Central, South America, and depending on the needs through our platform, we can identify the particular skill set that we need for a project and then onboard them onto the project. Fully remote, fully virtual. How
do you find your remote workforce? I mean, without giving away secrets, but do you have?
Yeah, exactly. Pounding the pavement. So we are directly engaged with a lot of the communities in Central and South America, Latin America. And so we go in there and we get our name out, and we now have brand recognition in a lot of markets. Brazil, Colombia, Chile, Argentina, Costa Rica, Nicaragua. I mean, I think in most Latin American countries. Venezuela was a tough one. I almost got somebody from there, but they're a little bit tougher. And we have a couple value propositions that are very, very interesting. We're not outsourcing any of the work, so we're actually getting these people to join part of a remote team with leadership from people that are tried and true leaders, technology leaders. We're giving them the opportunity to learn. We're giving them the opportunity to explore new opportunities, and we're also exposing them to business ideas that they wouldn't get in their countries. And I think that one of the things that we're the most excited about is how we compensate people. We have a fairness clause that we operate under where at least 50% or most of the revenue goes to the actual talent or developers. And so somebody in Latin America, say Bolivia, where they might make a handful of dollars a day, We're paying them $10, $20, $30, $40 an hour, depending on their skill set and how they're contributing. And we're also democratizing talent and how these people play or engage with the global workforce. And so our value proposition is very strong.
Speaking of global workforce, I mean, do you see a change that's really interesting? I think being able to level the playing field and give people opportunities in other countries that help with general economic development and global. Do you have any sense of, have you seen any changes with the global workforce by being able to, or what have you seen as a result by being able to pay a higher salary and what do you think is the future?
It's been democratization of labor and skills. If somebody has the good requirements, prerequisites for working remotely, and they can practice their skills or even grow their skills personally and professionally remotely, their opportunity to engage at that level, initially what we're seeing is people are engaging from other markets into the United States, but the cross-pollination is going also back to these countries, right? So where these people are joining teams, say in the Bay Area and San Francisco, to help solve a problem, they're also getting exposed and educated to think about these problems in their own economies. So to answer your question, like what are we seeing from a personal level? I have multiple stories where we're paying them so well that we're elevating them from their socioeconomic standing. I have one guy who I took under my wing. He was going to school. He was married, had one kid. They were working really hard. And after working with me for about 6 months, he and I had a heart-to-heart. And he told me, Tomas, I'm so grateful for the opportunity because we're now economically stable and my wife is able to go back to school because we can hire a nanny, and we're looking to buy our first apartment. And these were things that he couldn't even think about beforehand. And I mean, moisture in the eyes and the whole thing. And that's not the only story like that. So we're empowering a lot of people, not without risk, because part of the other side of the double-edged sword is that, yes, we're compensating them really well, but actually everybody is an independent contractor for the organization, including myself. And so we can't guarantee that we're going to have steady work for all of these people, but we do. And knock on wood, the technology market and the remote labor force and the demand for that is very strong. And so as of right now, and in our track record, we've been able to staff very strong resources and continue staffing them. And we're paying them so well that even when we have a lull, they're able to take vacation and go travel and go to conferences and do things that they couldn't do in their own markets. And I study that as well, which is the dynamic in their own markets, which is that organizations that are in these countries, say Bogota, Colombia, they don't know how to utilize the talent that they have in their markets. And so we are exporting those skill sets and making them inaccessible to these markets, which is a separate conversation, and a conversation that I have when I'm talking to executives in Latin countries.
Very cool. What do you feel is the biggest challenge working remotely in a team setting? So you've described all this work that you're doing together. What are some of the biggest challenges, or the biggest challenge?
The first thing that comes to mind is a sense of belonging and community. Part of working together as a team means building a relationship with the others in your team, feeling like you belong, like you're part of something bigger that hits that innate need of humans to feel like you belong. And that's very difficult, and it's very difficult to do if you're not employing certain things. The first caveat that I have is there is nothing like a face-to-face interaction. My contention is that we are judging machines. Humans are pre-built from an evolutionary perspective to get to the presence of another human and be able to judge them very quickly because it's imperative for us, our survival. Throughout our hunter-gatherer societies, every time we met somebody, we had to know if it was somebody different. Are they a friend or a foe? We need to know this very, very quickly within the first 10, 20, 30 seconds. We know if they're a threat or not, and then quickly escalate. And that comes from body language, from eye contact, from the intonation of your voice, from gestures, from how you present yourself to the other human. And that's something very difficult. Pheromones. There's something very difficult if you're not doing an in-person conversation. However, we're now at an age where we can get very close to there. I don't think we can get to 100% of that. But through what you and I are doing right now, through a video call, we're able to get to a lot of those things, except for the things that can't get transmitted digitally yet, maybe. And so you can get to that belonging and that sense of team. And so that is one of the biggest challenges, is how do you build that sense of belonging within teams? And that comes down to a couple things. I think you have to have people that understand these needs and the right processes and technologies that have to be in place to effectively create a team and a sense of belonging. So things like real-time communication, what you and I are doing right now as a team. And now we have things like Google Hangouts and Skype and Room and a bunch of others that enable you to see each other face-to-face. Not everybody has to have their video on all the time, but you get a sense of the other human, of the personality. You can build those bonds and that relationship. And then through asynchronous means, chats like Slack, HipChat, even Skype, you're able to get messages to the other people and work effectively, and then have one-offs, conversations. And so to answer your question, building that sense of belonging and wrangling all these personalities and making them work as a cohesive team is the most difficult thing, and it requires leadership and the right processes and the right technology.
Well, you were able to get one of your employees to open up to you and tell you about his personal life, and that requires, obviously, building that relationship. Would you say when you start out working with a new employee, do you immediately, do you have a requirement that you meet on Skype X amount of time per week, or how do you build that sense?
Everything that we do at Scalable Path, we try to do with Agile methodology and Scrum. Every day, if there's a team, we need to meet for at least 15 minutes once daily and talk to each other and see what we're working on. Part of our interviewing or vetting process when we have an opportunity is we meet via Skype and we have a voice interview with somebody that is an experienced interviewer that has some kind of expertise in whatever the skill set is that we're trying to staff or bring onto a team. And also to gauge their communication level. You have to have certain communication skills and language skills to work in a team. We have guys from Brazil, from Bolivia, from the US, and so we all need to speak English. And English becomes, it is the language of technology. And there's a lot of things that I think about with English that is a prereq not only to communicate, but to effectively create technology products or technology organizations. You need to be able to read the documentation, forums, IRC, HipChat, Slack with other teams, with collaborators. And if you don't do this, you're not going to be a good a technologist as if you only spoke your native tongue and not English.
That's interesting. And you yourself are, tell us a little about your background. Where are you from? And you came from a consulting background? Is that correct?
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Colombia. I'm a quarter American, and then the rest just mutt, like everybody else. And so born and raised in Bogota, Colombia. Came to the U.S. in my teens. I was 15. And then went to school here, finished school here. And then I had an opportunity. So I started working in technology. I was always kind of playing with all kinds of technology. In Colombia, we were very fortunate that we had one of the first Macs that ever came out, the Apple Classic, and I was hacking at that thing, and we had all the modems, and I was playing with ICQ and IRC and all kinds of other semi-dubious types of things at a very young age. And so when I was in college, I started my own technology consulting company, kind of before Geek Squad, or at the same time the Geek Squad was kind of going. And played with that. I also started hacking at PHP back then, working for the university. And then my last year, after I decided 3.5 years into my computer engineering degree, after a couple internships, I decided I did not want to be an engineer. And I then switched to computer science, computer engineering-ish, and entrepreneurship and management. And during that whole year, of between 3.5 and 4.5 years of my college career, I started working for a local startup in Minneapolis, and I was doing special projects. So for example, I did analysis on whether or not we should hit a particular psychographic, translate one of their websites to Spanish. I integrated some acquisitions, some web property acquisitions into their business model, carseatdata.org. And so I started playing with that startup, and they offered me a full-time position. But even though I saw a really cool future within the startup world, I knew that I wanted to learn about big business. And I had an opportunity with a couple companies, with Target. And then last second, I had an opportunity come in from Accenture. And so I did consulting, and in dog years, I did a lot of years over there, close to 6 years, and climbed that ladder. Lifetime for consulting, yeah. Up to the point that I decided, that's when you met me, exactly.
Right. I think you were just leaving Accenture.
It was, yeah.
About that time.
So,
go ahead, finish it. Go ahead.
Yeah, and then I came to a fork in the road where I realized, even though I am incredibly grateful for all the learning and battle experience that you get at a consulting firm, especially what I was doing, which was a global group called Startup Architecture Innovation. I decided that I wanted to pursue my passions in other ways, and so I decided to quit that.
Well, so that's a question. That's what kind of leads me to one question I wanted to ask you. Is how do you transition from the corporate? I didn't realize you had all of that experience kind of in startups and consulting beforehand, but how do you transition from a consulting job into the startup world, and what are some of the challenges that you find? Because not only are you a startup guy, but you're also a remote. You live and work from anywhere. Last picture I saw of you, you had your laptop and you were in a pool, I think in Colombia. So I think a lot of people want to know two things. How do you get from a job, a 9-to-5, to running your own company, let alone 500 remote employees, and how you're able to do it from a pool and a laptop and really do it. What are some of the key ingredients to your success? How do you transition, and what are the most important factors?
Mm-hmm. I think the topic of jumping off of the rat wheel or the rat race is a little beat to death these days. But the thing that comes to mind is that it is scary, and you are leaving the comfort zone of having a steady paycheck. And a lot of organizations don't support remote work. And so unless you're very fortunate and being part of an organization like that, you have to let go of those comforts. For me, it was a little non-standard because I've always been adventurous. I've always done going and backpacking and other things. And I was doing a lot of soul searching. I was in the rainforest and the beach in Costa Rica and staring out into the wild. And I decided I no longer want to go on the path that I'm going down, and I'm going to quit, and I don't know what's next. But I was very fortunate that I didn't have concerns, economic concerns, or dependence that I had to worry about, and so I was able to detach without having to think too much about the consequences. So for me, it was just a clean cut. I decided I no longer want to do this. I don't know what's next. But I kind of left it up to the universe because things usually work out. And that's a little bit too touchy-feely, but so I think the conclusion is that it's hard and it's scary. But also, once you do the math or you know how much you can survive with, especially Libby, as you know, like living, working anywhere, you need a lot less money than you think. So I decided to take a sabbatical year and go on my motorcycle and go backpacking and do other things. And after all the costs of the motorcycle and gear and everything, I had a budget of $12,500 for a year to travel. For a year? For a year.
$12,500 for a year. Okay.
I think it was $50 a day for gas, lodging, and food every day on the motorcycle. And then opportunities come along. But I think just to close out that thought and that question, so the biggest challenge in starting is getting past the fear, understanding what it is that you need to survive based on your particular needs and dependencies. And then the challenge is, how do you market yourself and how do you join that global economy of remote talent? And that's, I think, where it's much more difficult. And you and I have an early stage invitation to that because of the tech scene. But I see that more and more talent is, as long as you have the skills, most any talent can be done remotely.
So, what is it that you mentioned to me earlier that you have kind of a morning routine? And I think as somebody who's starting out, when you're going from a 9 to 5, metaphorically, but also you're given structure in a corporation, and when you leave to create, you have to create structure for yourself. And I think routine is key for an entrepreneur or digital nomad. And tell me more about your routine. What does it look like? What does your day look like?
I start, and probably we need to start the night before. I'm crazy into human performance, and I have my own framework of what human performance means, and sleep is at the core of that. And so morning routine actually starts the night before, and I try to get, my sweet spot is about 8 hours and 15 minutes of sleep, depending on how tired I am and how much demand I put on my body, how much sports I've been playing or working out or other things. And so I try to get to sleep at least 8.5 hours before I want to get up, and usually that's also before the sun, because there's something weird that happens as you start getting old, which is past a certain time of the day you can't sleep anymore. And for me, it's around 6:30, 7 a.m. And so I try to get to bed by like 9, 10, and then try to sleep. I never use an alarm anymore unless there's something very, very important. And so I wake up naturally.
I can't say I do the same, by the way. I don't wake up. I wish I could wake up when the sun came up, but I mean, I can't, there's no way I can get up before the sun comes up. When the sun comes up, depends on the time of year, but
I'm jealous.
But that's great. Okay, so you get up when the sun pops into your window.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Awesome. Okay, and then what do you do?
I try to align my circadian rhythm to the day, which is lovely. One of the things to throw in there is that I've stopped checking my email the first thing in the morning. So there was a time when the first thing that I would do was get up, grab my phone, check my email, and then start the day with that. I've moved away from that and prioritize other things. Thinking. So the first thing that I do, I get up. Fortunately, the commute for us remote people can be very short. So I commute to my kitchen, and I start the day making some coffee, and I have my whole coffee routine. I do, depending on my needs and how much nutrition I need, I'm doing butter coffee with heavy cream and or MCT oil.
What's MCT?
Medium chain triglycerides. So it's something that metabolizes into ketones very quickly. So if you're if you're in a ketogenic state, you can do multiple things with this. You can be satiated for a long time and not require food other than the fat, and so you don't get a mental slump. And you can also keep running under a ketogenic state for longer.
Sounds very interesting. I know nothing about that. But will you send me more information about that so I can add it to the notes?
Yes, that's absolutely.
Cool. Wow, you really optimized yourself. This is cool. Okay.
Yeah. And we won't go into all the other things because I play high-level squash. Then I use a lot of glycogen in my body, and I need to replenish that glycogen in my body, and I need to do that through high glycemic index carbohydrates. But if I just eat them in the morning, then I'm going to have a mental slump because of the insulin that gets produced and the sugars that get produced. And so there's a fine balance if I'm doing too much physical activity. But neither here nor there. So I get my coffee, I make my coffee, start drinking my coffee, usually about 2 cups of this stuff, 2 to 4 cups, bigger cups. About 2 cups a day in the morning. And then I might read for a bit. Right now I'm starting to write more in the mornings. So I'm starting, set aside before I do anything, 10 minutes writing after my brain starts going. One of the things that I also prioritize and I've been doing for a long time is learning. I find that first thing in the morning, it's a really good time to learn things, to try new things, to create things. And so, for example, the last thing that I've been doing is ramping up on Meteor JS, the technology stack, because I've been playing with it and hearing about it for years, but now it's mature enough, and so I need to be comfortable with it so that I can start utilizing talent that knows that and employing that in organizations. And so, also for a few of my own ventures, I'm very curious, and so I like to keep my tech skills sharp. And so I'll do an hour of that learning or exploration of playing with new concepts of or technology toys or ideas in the morning. And then I get ready for the day. And my day is usually comprised of multiple stand-ups for different organizations and products.
What's a stand-up, sorry?
Where I'm the lead. A daily stand-up is part of Scrum, part of Agile methodology. And the stand-up is where it comes from everybody in a team in a physical location would stand up from their desks, form a circle, and we'll talk about what have you done since the last time we spoke, what are you going to work on next, and then is there anything that's blocking you? And the idea for this is part of that community building. And it's for every team, for every organization, for every product to have the team come together and talk about what's going on, to align vision, to make sure that we all know what everybody else is supposed to be working on and clear any blockers. And we do that virtually, Google Hangout or GoToMeeting or any of the other tools. Prerequisite for any product, any project working with remote talent. And we also have the clients on there, any third parties, scalable path people, anybody and everybody that's touching the project. And so I'll do a handful of those. I'll pack my meetings kind of in blocks. And then, so calls, business development, playing with my own ideas. So that's my morning.
So, and the benefit to doing all that stuff in the morning is, I mean, that's your most productive time? Is that sort of does that help you feel more energized for the day to be able to start with the things that help you learn or help you?
Yeah, the morning into the early afternoon, I feel it's when the brain is at its highest performance. And so I want to get the things that require heavy mental lifting done at an early time of the day. And in a lot of projects, this requires, so when I'm dealing with a new organization or a startup or a tech company or we have a team, we're usually solving challenges. And so my brain needs to be functioning at a high level so that whenever there's a question about users or functionality or architecture or integration into the business or any other thing, that I'm creative, that I'm proposing solutions and not in a state where I'm drained or tired, which is not a time when it's as good to be doing these types of mental activities.
And this routine works for you no matter where you are in the world?
Correct. Yeah.
Awesome. And scheduling your day, I'd love to talk to you about products and services and products that help you schedule your day, how you handle calls, things like that. But I know we're on a little bit of a time crunch today, and I wanted to, speaking of teams, I just wanted to touch, briefly on the new product that you're working on, Remote Ready, because you've talked a lot about working together in teams, and you and I had a challenge trying to get together on a call of it today, which can happen even though we're both tech people. We had some tech issues. So you mentioned that you're proposing a solution. Can you tell us a little bit about Remote Ready?
Yeah. So Remote Ready, remoteready.io is right now just a seed, a little kindling project idea that came out of the experience that we've had at Scalable Path, where everything we do is remote. One of the biggest challenges that we see both at the client side or at the talent side is people's ability to be remote ready. And so remote ready means having at the resource level, at the individual level, be able to have the prerequisites to join a remote team, and at the organizational level, the ability to have the right processes, technology, and people to plug and play seamlessly with remote talent. A lot of times that what we see even with mature technology companies and most organizations actually is that they're not ready for remote talent. And it is a very big benefit for them to build their distributed muscle or remote muscle, like a CTO of a startup said to me. Because it has many benefits. One, yes, you're able to use talent and skill sets from a geographically distributed area like Latin America. Time zones is a whole nother thing we can get to at some other time. Sure. But also for talent retention. If your organization does remote really well, then your actual full-time employees can also use that as a perk. And what better if you're working at a company than be able to work from somewhere else, from home, from where you're vacationing, to extend your vacation, to do a bookended vacation somewhere else in the world. So take like a week or two of vacation, plus 1 week at each end, living and working anywhere from an Airbnb. And so I think from not the remote ready, being remote ready is not only important for organizations' ability to bring on remote talent or subcontractors or whatever you want, like people from Scalable Path, but also for their own talent and employees to have that as a perk. And also, there's a lot of information about this, but it's now coming up to, it's bubbling up a little bit, but there's a lot of other benefits from working remote. A workplace, a physical office is somebody, I think it's David from Ruby on Rails, has a great video on, what's that?
David Hennemer,
yeah. DHH. Has a really good video on this. And one of the things, paraphrasing, is offices are interruption machines. You're there working with a bunch of other people. People walk by you, they come up to you, they say things to you, and context switching is very important, especially when you're doing things creatively or in tech. You need to get into a groove. And the context switching is very expensive. And when you're in a physical office, it's an interruption machine which kills productivity. And so part of the benefit of working remotely is that you are the gatekeeper to your interruptions. You can decide to go on airplane mode or nuke all of your notifications and just work on the task at hand. If it's important enough, somebody will call you or you'll get a notification. But if not, you can get back to it later. We have to move away from a requirement of opening a Christmas present every time we get a notification in our inbox, and batch those things. But being remote enables you to control that much better than in an office environment where you don't have control over somebody walking to you and tapping you on the shoulder.
Absolutely. So, and I'm here in Tarifa, Spain right now. You can probably hear the wind behind me still, but and I am completely, I'm more productive because I don't have those interruptions. So where's your next trip going to be that you're going to be working remotely? Do you have that planned?
Yeah, there's a few. I think that the next one that's upcoming is with our CEO at Scalable Path. We both do a lot of adventuring. We're going to take kayaks to a little island where we have LTE reception, and we're bringing our solar panels and our batteries and working from there for a couple days.
That's awesome.
Yep. Yeah.
Always be prepared.
Yeah.
Always
so we have. Yeah. So I mean, funny enough, now with it's so nice. Yeah. Here's my like waterproof messenger bag with all of the tech, and here's the AT&T hotspot with external antennas, and here's the Verizon one, and then the phone, and then the car has another provider, so I can have a Wi-Fi hotspot in the car. Awesome. We go to such a crazy amount of planning that we sometimes go into a remote wilderness and we scope out what does the geography look like and where can we see line of sight to a tower so that we can then have our solar panels and our connectivity set. So we push it to the edge.
Yeah, but that's awesome. So you go on a kayak trip, you have your waterproof gear, you have all of your MiFi devices, and you're able to just be anywhere. I love kayaking. Do you ever find that you can't shut off? That you have a hard time shutting down because being off in the woods and kayaking is great, and having all your gear is great, so you can work from anywhere. But how do you put those boundaries?
Yeah, that's a really fun philosophical exercise. Yes, it means you can now work from anywhere, but I think that when you are somewhere and you're looking forward to doing things like adventuring, like going to the lake, like climbing trees, like doing whatever, you will knock out tasks faster because you know you want to go do the other thing. And so I find myself that if I'm somewhere really cool, I have my responsibilities, which I'm not going to slack on, but I want to get them done so I can go do the other stuff. I think that the disconnecting does become something that you have to build in, and you have to have that practice and set those boundaries and respect those boundaries. Because one of the challenges of our connected age is that we're always on, we're always bombarded, our attention is always divided. That's why I now have turned off every single notification on my device that doesn't require real-time interaction. Real-time is like getting an Uber and getting the notification that it's here. If it's not required for me, if it's not time sensitive, it's relegated to no notifications. And if I need to know about it, it has the badge. But nothing is allowed to come into my screen unless it's calendar or phone calls. And so it's building that practice of respecting yourself and respecting your time. So yeah, it does. There's all these things that come with it.
That's a great point. I just have to reiterate what you said about not just setting the boundaries, but respecting them. So finding that balance and really sticking to it, because it's really easy to let the distractions pop up and to get into the cycle of constant communication. And you have to have that discipline to respect the boundaries that you've set.
Yeah.
So how do we get? I want to again. I always have so many more questions, and you're such a great person to talk to, and you have so much passion and enthusiasm, and I love the way you explain things. Even MCT, I'm learning some fun things. But so how can we tell us? And I'd love to continue to talk about remote ready as it goes along, as it evolves. And especially as the future of remote work evolves and remote teams in particular. But tell us now, how can we get a hold of you? What's the best way to get it? And it's scalablepath.com, remoteready.io.
Right.
And what's the best way to find you?
Remoteready.io, there's nothing there. I'm currently hosting it on GitHub Pages, but I'm probably going to migrate that to some static hosting solution. And TBD on what that's going to look. What I initially want is a resource for the general public, the community, both individuals and organizations, to get an understanding of how to do remote, how to be remote ready. And TBD what that's going to look like. And we were chatting before, maybe there's some collaboration because you're living it, I'm living it, and I think this is something that it's not just going to be my brain, it's going to be a lot of brains, and we'll see what comes out of that. Best way to get a hold of me is at Togume, Togume, on Twitter, Skype, etc. About me, about.me/Tomas.Gutierrez. So, yeah. At Togume. At Togume everywhere. Yeah.
At
Little
Togume everywhere. I love that little link. Well, I know you have a busy day ahead of you, so I just want to say thank you so much. And it's always great to see your smiling face and to hear what you're up to. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Libby. My pleasure. Looking forward to the next one.
Sounds good. Bye, Tomas.
Bye, Libby.